Okay, it's 1:33 p.m. on August 14th, 2025. Opening the public hearing for file S0001-25 Deerfield subdivision. Preliminary plat. And before we begin to review the file, does anybody have any special needs, hearing assistance, anything of that nature? Okay, not seeing any. We'll call for conflict of interest with the board.
Commissioner Corn has none.
Commissioner Domke has none. And with that, we will turn it over to Mr. Johnson with staff to go through the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jason Johnson, Bonner County Planning. We're here today to discuss file S0001-25 Deerfield subdivision. The applicant is requesting in this case to subdivide and plat approximately a 32.67 acre parcel into 24 residential lots ranging from about 1 acre to about 3 acres each and 1 stormwater tract. Property is zoned as suburban. Subject property is located off of Baldy Mountain Road in section 16, township 7 north, range 2 west, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho. Project is in the Syringa Heights Water District, Northside Fire District areas, and is within the area of impact of the city of Sandpoint. These are the dates on the screen when the required noticing was accomplished on this file. As stated, the site's about 32.67 acres. It's zoned suburban and is land use designated in the comprehensive plan as a suburban growth area. Site has frontage on and is accessed via Baldy Mountain Road. It's a paved, county-owned and county-maintained road. Access will be provided through the subdivision via the planned Deerfield Drive. Deerfield Drive will be a privately maintained public road with paved surface. Right-of-way width is planned to be 60 feet. And the travel width of the proposed road is planned to be 24 feet. The applicant does have a will served letter from Syringa Heights Water District. So it will be on public water. Individual septic systems are planned for the lots. Per the application, Avista provides power within Northside Fire District. Solid waste disposal is to be the responsibility of individual lot owners. And the school district is Lake Ponderay School District number 84. As far as environmental factors go in general on the site, it slopes from north to south, highest point being the northeast corner of the property. Southernmost portion of the site has a steep slope of approximately 24 to 43% grade, and that's mostly designated to be the HOA open space stormwater lot. Upland portions of the site have moderate slope ranging from approximately 1 to 8%. The site contains some mapped wetlands towards the south near Syringa Creek. The southernmost portion of the site is also within special flood hazard zone A. No critical wildlife habitat has been mapped on or within the vicinity of the subject property. The site is comp plan designated as suburban growth area. The zoning is suburban. It is surrounded on all sides by suburban growth area designated land and by suburban zoned land, with the exception of the portion that abuts the city of Sandpoint. It's just an aerial view of the site there. There you can see the zoning and the land use designation. It's within suburban zone and it is land use designated as suburban. There are some wetlands towards the south of the property that are mapped near the creek. There are some steep slopes towards the south near the creek. Soils are pretty consistent throughout the site, mission silt loam. And their Syringa Creek is visible towards the south of the site, along with a mapped A zone floodplain. This is the top portion of the subdivision. I have split it into north and south to make it visible. It's kind of tall. This is the southern portion of the proposed subdivision. Agencies commented on this file, and those comments and public comments were all included in the records that were forwarded to the decision-making body. These are the standards that apply to this subdivision. We'll start going through those standards here. In general, the application was properly routed to the city of Sandpoint, agencies, and the public. Proposed lot sizes are adequate. So 1 acre minimum lot size for areas in the suburban district where urban water is provided. The proposal is consistent with the suburban zone as outlined at Bonner County Revised Code 12-324. As mentioned, lots are proposed to be served by individual septic systems and Syringa Heights Water District. Per BCRC 12-412, all proposed lots will need a sanitary restriction lift on the final plat. This must be included on the face of the plat for subdivision. The sanitary restriction lifts have to include a space for Panhandle Health's signature. In the previous hearing, the zoning commission acknowledged septic concerns that were raised in public testimony, and the zoning commission deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on this issue, consistent with the conditions of approval in the staff report. And of course, the site is served by Avista per the application and Northside Fire District. In general, easements, constraints on reserved land areas are shown in the plat. The plat is stamped by an Idaho licensed land surveyor. As far as lot size and dimensions go, the depth to width ratio of the lots is acceptable. There's an appendix that shows the math on that in a spreadsheet. Submerged lands are present on the southern portion of the subdivision, and those are not being counted toward the minimum lot size requirement in this case. So to get under 2.5 acres, but at 1 acre or above, urban water has to be provided. That is being done through Syringa Heights Water District. As previously mentioned, the sanitary restriction lift will be required on the final plat. The zoning commission hearing, zoning commission acknowledged septic concerns that were raised in public testimony, and they deferred to the judgments of subject matter experts on this issue. The site is, of course, proposed to be served by Avista and is within Northside Fire District. Water supply, as I've mentioned, will be provided by Syringa Heights Water District. The zoning commission in the previous hearing acknowledged septic concerns that were raised in public testimony, and they deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on the issue, consistent with proposed conditions of approval. Same thing for sewage disposal. They need a sanitary restriction lift on the final plat. The zoning commission in the previous hearing acknowledged septic concerns raised in public testimony and deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts, consistent with proposed conditions of approval. A note will be placed on the final plat to address fire hazard risk. That's addressed in the conditions of approval. The zoning commission acknowledged fire safety concerns raised in public testimony at the previous hearing, and they deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on the issue, consistent with the conditions of approval. A unique road name has been designated for the road, and a condition of approval has been added to make sure that occurs. There are no private roads proposed within the subdivision, so private road standards do not apply. Legal access is proposed to all proposed lots in the subdivision, and a public road frontage is required for the lots, and a public road is proposed subject to the conditions of approval. Trails and parks are not applicable to this application because Bonner County does not have an approved county trails plan. As far as natural hazards go, the subdivision is being designed around natural hazards. Southernmost portion does have a steep slope that is mostly being designated to the stormwater lot. As far as floodplain goes, the applicants are pursuing a letter of map change, letter of map revision. It's not known what the outcome of this process will be. It will either be removed from the floodplain or they will be required to get a floodplain development permit for the subdivision, depending upon the outcome of that process. Zoning commission in the previous hearing acknowledged septic concerns, fire safety concerns, stormwater management, and water runoff concerns raised in public testimony. And in all those cases, they deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on those issues, consistent with the proposed conditions of approval. For general environmental standards, the project has been reviewed to meet the requirements of BCRC Title 12, Chapter 7. The application form was completed properly and the plat was stamped by an Idaho licensed land surveyor. The next requirements are mostly regarding plat content, making sure that it was properly stamped off by a surveyor, making sure that the subdivision name, grid, north arrow is all showing, making sure that the boundary line of the lots to be subdivided are all showing. The submitted plat is missing the adjoining landowners' names and addresses, which is required by code. There's a condition of approval requiring that this be amended prior to final plat. Location, dimensions, and area of the proposed lots and roads. Application was deemed complete by staff and the plat is stamped by an Idaho licensed land surveyor. No land contours appear to be shown. This is not consistent with code, and there's a condition of approval to require the amendment of that data prior to final plat. Location of water courses have to be shown on the final plat. There's a condition of approval for that, as well as if any floodplain, if any remains after the letter of map change process. There's a condition of approval for that. Existing wells, springs, wetland boundaries, drainage channels are all shown. The plat was prepared and stamped by a professional surveyor. Proposed method of water supply, sewage, and solid waste disposal is given on the face of the plat. The zoning commission in the previous hearing did acknowledge septic concerns raised in public testimony, and they deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on the issue consistent with proposed conditions of approval. The same is true with stormwater management and runoff concerns that were raised in the previous hearing. They also deferred to subject matter experts on that issue. All easements of record have to be shown on the plat. That appears to be done. The plat was prepared and stamped by a professional surveyor. The use for the parcels for public use and for private use, both of those are given on the face of the plat. So the application appears to comply there. Preliminary road design plans have been submitted and reviewed by Bonner County Road and Bridge. There may be further modifications required, minor modifications required prior to final plat. There's a condition of approval requiring that the applicant meet whatever standards Road and Bridge has prior to submitting for final plat. The application was filed in accord with code, and of course, we are holding required public hearings. The proposal, the primary plat was considered valid. It was stamped by an Idaho licensed land surveyor. The improvements plan is not required at this stage. It's a requirement for final plat, and there is a condition of approval to make sure that that gets done. As far as the standards of review go, the zoning commission did recommend approval of this subdivision subject to the recommended conditions of approval. The next two requirements are both for final plat and are not applicable at this stage of the project. Conditions of approval have been added to make sure those get done. As far as shoreline code goes, subdivisions are allowed on lands with shorelines. A condition of approval has been added to make sure that shoreline buffer management areas are delineated on the final plat. And of course, any future development along the shoreline have to comply with the shoreline code that's in effect at the time they apply for the development. The applicant did submit a stormwater management and erosion control plan. It was stamped by an engineer and has been reviewed by Bonner County Engineering Department. The zoning commission acknowledged stormwater management and water runoff concerns in their hearing. They deferred to the judgment of subject matter experts on this issue. A condition of approval has been added to make sure that the applicant is required to finish out that stormwater plan prior to final plat. The subdivider did submit professional wetland and stream delineation, and so the project seems to comply with wetland code. No state, local, or federal agency identified the presence of any critical wildlife habitats on the site. Of course, there are some steep slopes on the south, and the proposal is being designed around the steep slopes. The southernmost portion of the site with the steepest slope of 23 to 43% is primarily going to be the open space stormwater lot. There's a condition of approval requiring a geotech report if that area ever gets developed. As far as flood damage prevention goes, the portion is within the floodplain. We don't know if it will still be there by final plat. Depending upon whether or not it is, there's a condition of approval requiring them to get a floodplain development permit if they remain within the floodplain. As far as the comprehensive plan goes, the proposal doesn't appear to be in conflict with policies of the implementation component of the comp plan. The proposal is discussed in detail relative to the individual policies that are in the staff report that was forwarded to the board. Getting into the proposed conditions of approval on this file. Condition 1 would be standard for any plat that was proposing lots of this size, just stating that a sanitary restriction lift is going to be required on the final plat. And that this has to include a space for the representative of Panhandle Health to sign off. Condition number 2 is a standard condition requiring that all easements be shown on the final plat. Condition 3 is also a standard condition. It's regarding the requirement for a fire protection plan. And then gives all the options for how that can be pursued and the details of how to pursue those options, whichever one the applicant chooses to pursue. Condition 4 is also pretty standard. The new roads have to be designated by unique road names. And if you pick a name that's already used, you have to pick a new one. Condition 5, at the time of staff report creation, there wasn't evidence that Deerfield Drive had been appropriately reserved. The applicant shall make sure that Deerfield Drive is an appropriately reserved name. Not all adjoining landowners are shown in the respective places on the plat. That needs to be corrected prior to final plat. Condition 7 is recommended to be struck at the last hearing. Clarification was achieved on who serves power at this site, and so condition 7 isn't really needed anymore. It does look like per condition 8 that contours are missing on the land, and those should be added into the record prior to final plat. Condition 9 is standard, just saying that lots less than 5 acres need direct frontage on a public road. Condition 10 is a standard condition for the expiration date on the subdivision, as well as the methodology for requesting an extension, should that be needed. Condition 11, it's a standard condition that says an improvement plan is required. And this is how you do it. Condition 12 is a standard condition. Don't begin constructing your improvements until after your improvement plan is approved and finished. Condition 13, water courses seem to be missing on the plat, and so the final plat shall be amended to show the location of all water courses and any approximate floodplains that remain. Condition 14 is pretty standard. This just gives the option, instead of constructing improvements, to bond for improvements, and then it lays out the details for how the applicant should do that. That would be on any subdivision. Condition 15 is also pretty standard. It's a condition that just says you have to complete the conditions of final plat in code prior to final plat. Condition 16 is also pretty standard. The stormwater management and erosion control plan that has been submitted has to be amended, consistent with whatever the Bonner County engineer determines necessary, and that this has to be done prior to final plat. Condition 17, because they are within zone A of floodplain currently, if they remain after the letter map revision process finishes, they just need to get a floodplain development permit for this subdivision. That'll be required to be issued prior to final plat. Condition 18 is more of the same, just letting the applicant know how the application for a floodplain development permit would be reviewed. Condition 19 is recommended per staff and the zoning commission to be struck. It was in the original staff report, but at the last hearing, the staff and the zoning commission were in agreement that this condition is unnecessary. The existing conditions are fine for floodplain development. Condition 20, they just need to delineate the shoreline buffer management areas consistent with code. Those are required to be delineated on the final plat. Condition 21, pretty standard. Any future development within this subdivision has to comply with the shoreline code that's in force in Bonner County at the time such development is applied for. And condition 22, also pretty standard. There are some steep slopes on the lot in the south. This is the standard requirement that says a geotechnical analysis is required if you're going to be developing on those steep slopes. These are the two images of the subdivision, bottom and top there. That concludes my presentation. If there were any questions from the board.
I do have a few, so let me find my way back to. So. I'm confirmed first, Mr. Johnson, with regard to. The standards of review. We go to, code item. 12-621. Lot design depth to width ratio. I see that you reference, and I see that there is the, table in the appendices where that was reviewed and shown to be compliant.
Mhm.
Was that done? After, and through amendment to the March 17th letter that you wrote, noting that some of the lots did not appear to comply?
Yes,
Okay,
it was partly that there were a couple of them that didn't comply, and partly that I misinterpreted how they numbered those lots.
Okay.
Once there was a couple they actually had to change, and then the rest of them were just, I misunderstood how they numbered them.
okay. Wonderful. And then. We go to. 12-642 B2, we're getting into plat content. So we have B2, actually, we're gonna B3. Location, dimensions, and area of proposed lots, lot numbering. In one or more of those correspondence that you had written. You had noted, and I also noted my review, that the match line on the preliminary plat does not appear to work to be functional and accurate to show the conditions of the lots. Has that been resolved to your knowledge?
Yeah, those were all resolved. It was a misunderstanding, and that plat is a little strange on its numbering. It took, you might want to reference that to the applicant, that detailed question, but they've resolved it to my satisfaction.
Okay, because I don't see it being resolved on the plat, preliminary plat as presented, the match line issue. And then there's the information under 12-7.2, the grading, stormwater management, and erosion control. There's a submitted and stormwater management plan. How or would that be affected by the outcome of the floodplain review?
I'm sorry,
How or would that be affected by the outcome of the floodplain?
it wouldn't be. They have nothing to do with one another. Our stormwater code is local code and floodplain is federal law.
I mean, in the sense of practically, if there is a floodplain there, has the stormwater mitigation plan been reviewed to confirm that the
Stormwater plans have nothing to do with floodplain regulations at all. There's never a stormwater plan that's reviewed we're talking about Title 14 here. It's a local implementation of a federal law, CFR Title 44, which does not take any of our local stormwater code into account at all.
I understand that that doesn't account for our local codes. I mean, from the perspective of, do we know if this proposed stormwater plan, the location detailing of that has any practical issues with regard to if there's a floodplain there?
If this is an engineering question, that should be addressed to the staff, the applicant's engineer.
Okay. All right. Then those are all the clarifying questions I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant, who wants a representative for a presentation.
That's the one. Let me get this presentation up on their screen. Gonna go to the first. Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Laura Cannon. I'm a environmental and land use planner with HMH Engineering. I also have Dan Taddick here with me. He's also with HMH Engineering, and he's the licensed professional engineer on this project. And we are here representing the applicant. The property owner and applicant are both Deerfield LLC. The requested action is approval of a 24 lot subdivision in Bonner County. The vicinity map here shows the project site directly west of the city of Sandpoint, and that small property within the city of Sandpoint there that's on the eastern boundary is the Frisbee Disc Golf Course. And the property is located just south of Mount Baldy Road. The subdivision design is a 24 lot subdivision with one stormwater tract down in the southeast corner. And this is the orientation of the subdivision. The plat does have it into two separate sheets just for detail, but here you can see the whole subdivision, and hopefully that helps explain that match issue line on the plat, or helps at least orient you a little bit better. Looking at the current land use, the site is currently vacant. There is slight topography, as Mr. Johnson indicated, the slopes are typically 1 to 8% on the main part of the site. And then it goes from the northeast corner as the highest part of the property to the southwest corner, which is the lowest. And then those steep slopes down on the southern end do exceed 30% slope, but those are all right around the Syringa Creek area on the very southernmost portion of the site. The water provider is Syringa Heights Water District, and we do have a will serve letter from them. Wastewater disposal is going to be individual septic. And we do have a letter from Panhandle Health District stating that the soils in the area are suitable for septic systems, either basic or pre-treatment, depending on the location. Panhandle Health will conduct spring monitoring in 2026 to observe for the presence of surface water. And that spring monitoring will result in appropriate setbacks for those systems. Additionally, PhD will not lift the sanitary restriction on the final plat until they are satisfied that all lots can be served with appropriate setbacks between surface water and septic fields. And lastly, the electrical and gas provider is Avista. Looking at the surrounding land uses, the properties directly adjacent on all sides are large lot, single family residential. And then again, that Frisbee disc golf course that's within the city limits of Sandpoint on the eastern boundary. And all of those uses are directly compatible with the proposed residential subdivision. Looking at Bonner County Code 12645, these are the standards for review of applications for preliminary plat. And the first section A is that the proposed subdivision is in accordance with the with the purposes of the title and of the zone district in which it is located. So looking at that zoning, the current zoning there is suburban. All the adjacent properties are also suburban. And the suburban zone does allow for 1 acre minimum lot sizes, which the applicant has met. There are 2 lots that exceed that 1 acre minimum. One of them is the stormwater tract, and the other is lot 10 on the southern portion of the site that interacts with Syringa Creek. Looking at the land use designation in the comprehensive plan, the comp plan is currently in the process of being updated. So the current land use designation is suburban growth area. The proposed and maybe adopted in the near future land use designation is suburban residential. And both of those land use designations are in line with the proposed use of a residential subdivision with lots of this size. Criteria B is that the site is physically suitable for the proposed development. As we discussed earlier, there's relatively moderate slopes of 1 to 8%. The surrounding land uses, all of those are in alignment with the proposed use. Criteria C is that the design of the proposed subdivision will not adversely impact Bonner County's natural resources as identified in the comprehensive plan. Any adverse impacts or potential for impacts shall be mitigated as a condition of approval. So diving into those natural resources, again, as discussed just a moment ago, there are steep slopes on the site. And this is a LiDAR image. The red indicates areas with slopes in excess of 30%. And the yellow areas indicate slopes between 15 and 30% slope. As you can see, they are all down along Syringa Creek. Again, that southeast corner is reserved for a stormwater tract. And that southwest corner is lot 10, but there is suitable buildable area for a home site above those steep slopes. Looking at the floodplain, the project is adjacent to 2 designated flood areas, one being Syringa Creek and the other Chuck Slough. A portion of the proposed subdivision does fall within the Zone A floodplain. As a requirement of Bonner County Code, all developments over 5 acres are required to go through a LOMAR or letter of map change process. All development is anticipated to be 30 feet or above Syringa Creek. The LOMAR will potentially modify the current effective floodplain and the firm maps. If it updates the floodplain boundaries, base flood elevations, floodways, and other data on the firm and or flood insurance study. If it is revised, data can show that a structure or parcel is no longer within the 100-year floodplain. And the LOMAR can remove mandatory flood insurance requirements and lower insurance premiums. So if FEMA determines that we are not removed from the floodplain, we will have to comply with the floodplain development regulations of the Bonner County Code. But we are currently working with FEMA and have not come to a resolution on that yet. So that is in process currently. There is also a seasonal freshwater forested shrub wetland associated with Syringa Creek. And Facet, who is a third-party consultant, did a wetland delineation study and identified the wetland boundaries in accordance with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers methodology. Both the floodplain and the associated wetland are located again in that southernmost corner and approximately 30 feet above the proposed roadway, 30 feet below the proposed roadway and outside the identified buildable areas. Criteria D is that the public-private services, including but not limited to water, sewer service, solid waste, fire protection, emergency services, and school facilities and transportation, which will serve the proposed subdivision, are adequate for the needs of the future residents and users. As part of Bonner County Code, they are required to coordinate and provide public agencies a chance to comment on the proposed subdivision. Mr. Johnson had in his staff report the agencies that did provide comment. Most of them were insignificant or boilerplate language that would be required of any subdivision. The applicant and HMH Engineering have gone through pretty extensive talks with the fire district. And on May 29th, we requested a variance. And 2 variances actually were requested and granted. The first is that a single location community fire suppression water storage tank is going to be proposed with IFC compliant access and a single hydrant connection at a central location per the North Side Fire District requirements. And then the second variance is that the developer proposes to install a 90,000 gallon community fire suppression water storage tank, complete with a hydrant connection at a central location, again, meeting the Northside Fire District requirements. And that will allow for construction of homes with a fire flow calculation area in excess of 3,600 square feet. So again, these variances were requested of Northside Fire District and both of them were granted. And with that part of that design, is that 90,000 gallon storage tank. You can see that's located on the northern part of lot 10, which is that 3-acre lot on the south end of the site that is adjacent to Syringa Creek. So that storage tank will be buried underground in the location you can see here on this slide. Criteria E is that the proposed subdivision will not cause circumstances to exist that will cause future residents or the public at large to be exposed to hazards or health or safety. This kind of goes back to what we just discussed with emergency services, fire protection, and those natural resources. And I just covered those in previous slides. Next criteria is that the design of the proposed subdivision or related improvements will provide for coordinated access with the county system of roads and with the adjacent system of roads. And will not impede on the use of public easements for access to or through the proposed subdivision. The proposed transportation system is designed to adequately and safely serve the future residents or users without adversely impacting the existing transportation system by reducing the quality or level of service or creating hazards or congestion. So on this view of the plat, you can see the circulation from Mount Baldy Road. That's Deerfield Drive going north-south and then kind of making a U shape up to the Hammerhead, which is the fire access and turnaround area. Lot 10 you can see is again, has proper circulation for that water storage tank so that emergency services can get to and from that. There is alignment that was approved by Bonner County Road and Bridge for potential future circulation and subdivision expansion, potentially to the north there. So the roads provide for future connectivity. Deerfield Drive lines with the driveway north of Baldy Mountain Road. So that line of sight is lined up on both driveways. Per the Bonner County Code, a trip generation and distribution letter was provided. The trip generation is an objective process that utilizes the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual for determining the vehicular trips generated by a particular development. The analysis found that the subdivision would generate 24 trips per hour during peak hours. To require a full traffic study, it is typically required, that's typically required when trips exceed 50 trips per hour during peak hours. So the Bonner County Road and Bridge Department did not require a full traffic study because the amount of the amount of trips generated was less than half of that threshold. Criteria G is that the proposed subdivision design is to comply with the design criteria for subdivisions set forth in chapter 6.2 of this chapter. Mr. Johnson outlined that very thoroughly in his staff report and then went through it kind of section by section here, so I will not reiterate those. I think he did a very thorough job. And with that, I can stand for any questions. And I would also like to note that the applicant has reviewed the conditions of approval set forth by the zoning commission and is fully able and willing to comply with those conditions.
Thank you. Questions, commission questions? No. So I would like to circle back to some of the questions I was asking staff. Do you have any information with regard to what appeared to be the inaccuracy of the match line between sheets 2 and 3 of the correct preliminary plat?
Yeah, I'll let Dan Taddick, he's the PE on the project, to address that.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Taddick. I'm with HMH Engineering. I believe the match line issue was just a matter of the viewport extending beyond the match line on each sheet. So there's an overlap in the image on both sheets is what you're seeing. Working with Jason and our PLS on the project, I believe we've addressed his concerns about it, but if there's others and it's just changing the image on the page, we can certainly do that.
And then has there been, looking at the current initial preliminary stormwater mitigation plan information, where are you guys at with regard to how that intent aligns with or does not with the wetland location based on it as delineated, and also considering if the floodplain map is not altered.
Yeah, so with the floodplain map specifically, a base flood elevation had never been determined on this portion of Springer Creek. So that was really the process we were undertaking. So that analysis has been completed and submitted to FEMA. We're working through their review process right now. Nothing happens quickly, it seems, with federal agencies. We were hoping that by this meeting, we'd have that resolved and that base flood elevation established, but we don't have that information back from them at this time. Our analysis indicates that that base flood elevation is below any of our planned improvements. And obviously FEMA will be the final arbiter of whether that is accurate following their methodologies.
So I didn't see, and I might be missing it in the current on file stormwater plan. The actual size and location of the proposed storage area, retention, detention, or other treatment and following volume area. Is that something that's been identified and addressed with regard to slopes and the floodplain and the wetland in that area?
Yeah, I think the remaining comments we had specific to stormwater were regarding the slopes of the geotechnical report. And then the fact that the original stormwater plan, the preliminary stormwater plan, did not include erosion sediment control plans associated with it. So those are both conditions of approval from engineering with Bonner County that we need to include in order to get an approved stormwater plan. But in
Okay.
terms of volume, size.
So it's not
that.
it's not resolved at this point. It's
No, there
Process.
were two remaining comments that need to be satisfied to have a final approved stormwater plan.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Questions? No, thanks. Okay. Does the applicant's representatives have any additional information you'd like to include in your initial presentation?
Not at this time. No.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go to public comment. So I'm just trying to figure out the for, opposed and neutral. So person that was on the list as for Charlestown and Williams. So we will, I don't see anyone on the list that's in support of the application. So I'm just going to ask if there's anyone in the room first who is in support of the application that would like to offer comment. Is there anyone online who would like to offer comment in support of the application? John Monks? John, if you're speaking, you'll need to unmute yourself first. We cannot hear you.
will not be speaking in support, so I'm waiting until the opposition.
Okay, come back to you then, sir. Is there anyone online that would like to speak in support of the application? Can we see everyone who's online? Yeah. All right, seeing none. We'll move to, is there anyone in the room? Let me start with actually, looks like Kim Call is neutral and would like to offer comment. Is that correct?
Okay,
All right. And please state your name and residency before you begin your comment.
okay, should I stand here, face
Yes.
you guys? Okay, I'm Kim Call. My husband Travis and I have lived next to the proposed property. We're on the western edge of the property. We own 17 acres there. To give you a little history, we've lived there 23 years. And this parcel that is looking to be divided and our 17-acre parcel were once one 50-acre parcel owned by the Darnell family. They built our house, and then in about 1987, they lopped off the 17 acres and kept 33 for themselves. At that time, they granted an easement easement was put into place, I should say, on the property, and you'll see that on the plat, they have a 30-foot easement they've used for almost the past 40 years for access because there was no existing road. And I guess the concerns that my husband Travis and I have are, number one, the drainage. It sounds like I'm really happy to hear that Panhandle Health is going to be doing a study on that, because when the property has been looked at, it's always been done in the fall. And the delineation report was done September 13th. And also the test plots for the sewer septic systems were done in the fall as well. And there is a lot of drainage that comes across that property in the spring, especially. And if you look at the application, HMS's stormwater management plan in the application online, page 21, shows the basin drainages, and they've identified several existing drainages and basins. And one major one was not accounted for on there. We have 2 culverts that go through that one. I'll just point it out right here. There's nothing listed right here. There's a culvert that runs here and here. And you can see it's a major drainage across our property. And that was not indicated as even an existing drainage. If I don't keep those culverts clean in the spring, water will run over my driveway. So there is a lot of water that comes through that whole thing. And I just wanted to point that out. And the reason we want that to be aware is for not only there's going to be 24 septic systems that potentially drain either across our property or, you know, our that are going to be put in on the property that drains, you know, from their property that drains through ours, and either across our entire property or out the back. And all of that ends up in Syringa Creek. So that's a concern, I think, for everyone in the neighborhood as far as septic systems. Also Deerfield Drive, I didn't see, now I'm not an architect by any means, that any of the sections of the road that are in that first section of the road have culverts, and there is that drainage that's not accounted for. Also, we have concerns with the fire response time. On April 5th, there was a fire that started there. One of the future landowners was clearing some property, started a fire to burn the slash. It got away from him very quickly and burned onto our property and the property to the south. So I know they're working with Northside. They'll have water to put the fire out once they get there, but it took them 25 minutes to respond to the property. And that is directly from the person who started the fire. That's where that information he told us as when that happened. Also, Baldy Mountain Road. Oh, am I out of town?
You are now. Yes.
Oh. All right.
Anybody want to give her time?
Does anyone want to give me just a little tiny time?
Give you some time, Paul, Vogel, and when you catch, right? Take the time you need, I have mine.
Okay, well, I'll
So
try to
you're
take 1
gonna
minute.
Donate your 3 minutes?
No, just like one.
1 minute out of my tree.
You can donate your time or not, we can't manage it that way, so.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to donate your time?
I'll
Um,
donate my time.
Yes.
Oh,
All right.
thank you.
Oh.
Also, we just want to make a note of Baldy Mountain Road. It's very, it's a real busy road, and it is a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. Cars don't travel 35 miles an hour on that. I mean, I know that's not under the control of anyone, but that's at the flat area and they drive very fast. There's a wildlife crossing right across Baldy Mountain Road. The sun rises to the west. I run on that road. I've almost been hit several times. It's just a really busy road, and where that's coming in, it's not far down the hill of that road. And so it's just a concern for the neighborhood, everyone who walks, exercises, and drives about the additional congestion that is going to be in that area. So that's a big concern, I know, to all of our neighbors. And also the final thing I just want to mention here is, as you noted on the plat, the western edge, when they divided that property and have the easement down our driveway for access, there was no access to the property. Now, all of the residents, the 24 lots will be served with that existing road. Or the road that they're gonna put in, what? I don't know why it's beeping. What's
That
going on?
microphone has been difficult.
I don't, okay, I'm
No,
like, I
I
don't,
don't think it's you, it's the microphone.
okay. Thank you. So when now that all 24 lots are going to have legal access from the road, we would like to request under final platting that easement of the 30-foot easement be removed for access, because they'll no longer need that line, the access to our property. And that was granted when they divided the properties in 87 so that they would have access. They've used that access a few times a year to access it, and it's been just the Darnell family primarily for that access. And now 24, I mean, there's that easement for access, and we just like to have that terminated.
Is that right on the property line?
Yes, sir. It is the first 30 feet of which is our driveway. And there's our driveway runs right there, and it's the 30-foot that runs here. The driveway runs from here and goes to the house here. And it curves here. And so anyway, there's that 30-foot easement that have been used for access for like almost 40 years, but it won't be needed in the future. And because they're gonna have, every lot will have their own legal access as per is appropriate for them. And I think that's it.
All right.
Thank you, and thanks for the new microphone.
Not sure if that was neutral or opposed, but when it comes to anyone who's neutral, is there anyone in the room that would like to offer comment? Yes, sir.
It's neutral because I don't know anything about the subdivision. I live in the South Sago Woods, which is a
Do you appreciate your
suburb of
name?
Palachi. My name is James Armashot,
Thank you.
and I live at 470 Meadowview Drive off of South Sago cutoff. And I just want to comment on the reputation of the planning department and the commissioners in the past. First, I want to say,
Sir, I'd like you to please keep your comments specific to the file.
I can't
and
do that. I
not to
can't.
people.
I don't know anything about this one.
Okay, this is not the venue for that conversation, then please. If you'd like to schedule a meeting or have some other conversation, I'm happy to do that, but not speaking about individuals. Thank you. Do we have anyone in the room that'd like to make a neutral comment? Do we have anyone online who would like to make a neutral comment? No. Okay, we'll move on to those who are opposed. Let's start with the list. Paul Vogel, sir, I think you donated your time, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. The next opposed person crossed their name out. Next person crossed their name out. Paul Guthrie. Okay, sir, please state your name and residency for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Paul Guthrie, and live at 1149 Upland Drive, just up the road and just upstream on Seringa Creek. I know it's zoned as suburban 5. This 3 years ago, we tried to do a simple split of just 1 acre off of a 9-acre parcel, and you guys disallowed that. So putting 24 acres or 24 lots on this 32-acre parcel, I don't know how it fits, how it works into our whole scheme of things. The septic's been talked about, and I know it's on the Panhandle site that some test holes were for multiple lots. And as Jesus stated, the septic in that area does not perk that well. I really don't care what anyone else says. That place is a lake in the springtime. So having all that stuff underground running places that it shouldn't go, and eventually ending up in Chuck Slough, which has its own issues, that's not good either. As far as 24 watts and the traffic study that was done, that's 2,000 vehicle trips per week, just out of that lot, or that subdivision. That is a tremendous amount of traffic, and where the road intersects with Baldy coming down the hill, as we all know, that's an icy road during winter. People, and with the traffic gonna be one that goes through the city, they're gonna be making that uphill turn onto ice. That's gonna cause all kinds of problems, and you can just see it already happening. If we wanted to live in the city, most of us, I think, would say, okay, we'd move to the city, but moving the city to us is not really what we want. The place, this is the fact that it's zoned as suburban. And I noticed that they kept saying that it's single family residences. Well, the single family residences on farms, not just out there in the woods. I mean, a lot of people have critters, a lot of people are doing more things than just living in their house. That's why they have that land. And this is a big encroachment on everybody. Also, the light pollution that would be emitted from, well, you figured probably multiple lights per lot. I mean, we might as well just live in the city if we're gonna have to suffer through that. And now I'm out. Thank you. Rich Crawford.
Rich Crawford, Bonner County. I want to give a brief compiled list of the problems that I see with the proposed plat, but it seems very clearly to add up that the board should recommend that the applicant redesign or reapply before approval, and will certainly until the spring perk tests are completed. I was hoping Mental Health, Catherine, or Dustin had spoke prior to this, because they do have scheduled a spring perk test, which will change potentially the setbacks. It looks as though the facts presented that they cannot build these lots as presented because of the setbacks and the wetlands that it could, and to approve it at this time seems unnecessary and too early. Once this preliminary plat is approved, for the most part, everything moving forward goes out of the public eye. And this is unfortunate, but somewhat deserved mistrust in the planning department. There's concern regarding amendments to the proposal that could be approved. I understand this is a preliminary plat, and this is why all the conditions for final plat come now, but the changes that could be required at this point should be resolved or be prohibitive at this point. There's a discrepancy in the code regarding ADUs. Comments by Bill have been submitted. The plat should be stamped ADUs are not allowable, and obviously the code needs to be addressed. While I commend Chief Armstrong for looking at a solution for fire suppression, when it comes to fires, meeting the intent of the IFC for flow and water storage is not the same as meeting the code through variances. He doesn't mince words when he states the fire department doesn't have resources to protect this subdivision or any other. I'm sure others who have typically attended hearings who speak out on fire, like Wayne Martin, would speak out, but undoubtedly they're all working on fires, like the Sunset Fire. The subdivision certainly does not meet the criteria for road and bridge, or does meet the criteria for road and bridge to require a traffic impact study. This is at the discretion of them. The threshold that she's talking about is by ITD. Section 3.5 of the Bonner County Comp Plan under housing suggests that it does, that for safety reason, it can be done. There's it has to be one of 4 criteria in the road and bridge manual, and it meets 3 of those criteria. again, those were submitted. The nutrient pathogen studies that John Monks will talk about will paint a clear picture that this density in this area is not good, and I'll let him address that along with the algae and shark stew problem. The city of Sandpoint has voted to remove this area from its ACI, and while density near cities is more desirable than in rural areas, allowing 1 acre subdivisions almost ensures that annexation will be undesirable and unaffordable developments in the city in the future, meaning these subdivisions that are designs that are approved are responsibility of the county for in perpetuity. A bit off topic, but the latest GIS satellite photos where you can see there where the road is going in and the fire mitigation plan submitted by the applicant show an intent to clear grade the most southwest corner of where the stormwater facilities are going to go. And I certainly hope that the planning director in his role as the flood plan administrator has prevented any disturbance to this point in this area without the FEMA permits being removed. And like I said, there was a wildfire that may have already impacted this area. I saw the land.
mean anything if it's in on 0 for
Okay, sorry about that.
That's. In staff, they notice it. We accept any assistance.
I will stop and you tell.
Anyway.
If you know the time of that, I might mention it.
No, I'm just.
We will do our best. Richard McDonald.
Richard McDonald, Baldy Mountain Road. Panhandle Health requires 2 drain fields per lot, one for immediate use and the other for replacement as needed. They also require setbacks from drain fields to water channels like ditch lines of 50 feet and 100 feet to open water. This is important because when the new property owner applied for the BL, when the new property owners apply for their critical location permits, they will have to provide an updated stormwater to show how they will treat the increased runoff from impervious surfaces as required. I say increased because the project engineers assumed for the preliminary plat that total impervious area of 5,000 square feet per lot would be allowed. This allows 4,250 square feet for the home and garage and 750 square feet for the driveway, which is just enough for a parking pad from the garage doors. The plat allows for this runoff to be drained to the collection pond. The homes on this area are probably going to be a lot larger and could add another with the driveway necessary of approximately 2,000 square feet more impervious surface, more or less. Swales will have to be installed on the homeowner's property to treat runoff prior to leaving the site. These swales will be considered open water and require a 100-foot setback. It isn't feasible that could happen. The Panhandle Health, because they're at the end of the planning process, would have to deny these permits to their homeowners, which we've seen happen already. From the Bonner County staff report, the proposed conditions of approval state in item 8, not all contours show the shape and the land extending at least 100 feet beyond the subdivision. These limits appear to show on the plat. This information shall be corrected and submitted prior to scheduling for the final plat. If ADUs are applied for later on, then even more sewer treatment and swales for detentions will be needed. A 50-foot setback to drains fields will be required from the proposed gutters along Deerfield Drive. There are also at least 3 proposed culverts across Deerfield Drive. These culvert inverts will have to have swales above them to treat runoff from lots 5, 7, and 8, block 2. County engineers have not reviewed the subdivision since March. Considering this and the fact the fire chief has written that he cannot protect this subdivision or any others in the case of wildfires, I ask for the continuance or denial of this plan. It may be allowable, but not feasible. Should I submit this here as well?
Yeah, thank you. Does everyone that signed up that hasn't crossed their name out? Do you have anyone else in the room that would like to offer comment in opposition to the proposal?
Bill. Bill. You need to speak.
Do we have anyone online that would like to speak in opposition? John Monks? And you'll need to unmute yourself, so.
Here's- let me refer to this part.
Hello, my name is John Monks. And I'm my primary concern with this proposal is with septic. I'm a retired hydrogeologist. I've worked on a number of projects around Sandpoint and Bonner County area, and I'm very familiar with the subsurface conditions at this site. I also lived just across the road from there for a few years. My ex-wife still does. I spend quite a bit of time in that area and have observed for myself the hydrology and of the area. I don't think that 24 septic tanks or septic drain fields on that site is appropriate. I believe that the effluent from those drain fields will enter into Syringa Creek and then into Chuck Slough. And I believe that that would have a negative impact on Bonner County's natural resources. I believe that those nutrients, once they're in Chuck Slough, along with all the ones that are already there, are going to potentially lead to more harmful algae blooms like we're experiencing right now. We have a problem. We need to start fixing the problem and not make the problem worse. So I would, that's my primary concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone else online that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, with that, we will close public comment. And we will go back to the applicant and or their representatives if they'd like to offer any rebuttal.
Hello, Dan Taddick again with HMH Engineering. Specific to the septic issue and concern, the staff report and the associated condition of approval, suggested condition of approval, puts that regulatory requirement on Panhandle Health. Laura spoke to it in the presentation earlier. They will conduct spring monitoring. They have confirmed that. They will not sign the final plat. They will not provide the sanitary restriction lift without the spring monitoring. So if they deem the spring monitoring if they find the presence of surface water during the spring monitoring, they will apply the appropriate setbacks at that time. If those setbacks result in some of these lots not being able to be served, then the plan will have to change. Either lots will have to be larger, or perhaps septic systems will have to be placed on other lots within easements, but those issues will have to be addressed in order for that final plat to be executed. And that's all I had. I just wanted to restate that, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Questions? I don't think so. None at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we move into board deliberation, and this planning get chances and you get it. Planning doesn't get a rebuttal. They're not an applicant.
No. Alex Fan, planning staff. So you do have representatives from Road and Bridge and PhD here if you do have any regulatory questions. So if you do have them, you're welcome to call on them.
Could I ask the planning department just to spend a real brief minute and explain what a short plat is? Or not short plat, preliminary plat.
Sure. So preliminary plat is the initial review of a land division. So the next phase of this would be improvements, and then a final plat is after all improvements have been either completed or bonded for. So it's the preliminary review before a lot more effort, I would say, or money expenses is placed on the applicants to go through, further studies, road designs and whatnot. And infrastructure, not just planning, but infrastructure design and construction. You're giving them the green light to move forward, and so long as all the conditions are met, then the final plat should be approved. So
Thank you.
and Bill and I spoke regarding the reason statement analysis. So just like we had, or I think it was yesterday, we had a subdivision file. I think we're of the same mind. Board can feel free to disagree, but rather than going through every single standard and saying we adopt the findings of the staff report, the board can just adopt the findings of the staff report and then deliberate on the contested facts or those that you have a concern about and want to deliberate on. So rather than looking at every single one and saying yes, 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 and this one we're going to discuss, you can just adopt it as such and then deliberate on those concerns. Bill's online if you have any questions on that process. It's a little bit of a change, but it's a little less arduous on your guys' time.
That makes sense to me. Tell you what, before we start board deliberation, I'll take a 5-minute recess to give everybody a chance to just stretch and have a bathroom break if needed and give staff a minute away from the computer. So it is 2:44 and we will recess until 2:50.
Yeah.
Excuse me, everyone, we're gonna begin again, so if you could please take the conversation out of the room or be seated. Excuse me, we're about to reconvene, so if you could please either take a seat or take your conversation outside of the room, I appreciate it. It's amplified a little more than we thought. Thank you. All right, it's 2:52. And we're back in session. Recess, and we are in board deliberation. Commissioner Foreman, would you like to start the conversation or would you like me to?
I will just start real briefly, and I think what the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, would be to have you let me know which ones, if any, that you may not agree to revise. If you, I don't see them. That strikes me. But I have a problem, so I'm gonna
Okay.
leave it up to you.
I'd like to start a high level conversation then before we dive into the actual worksheet. If that works for you. So. I have some concerns at this time with regard to making a final decision to approve one of them. I just feel like there's too much incomplete information. I think the question that's been raised by PhD and members of the community with regard to being able to confirm what the surface and associated therefore groundwater conditions without that information. We really can't appropriately define what the right setbacks are, and that can have a significant impact on whether or not the current preliminary plat is appropriate. And really functional and feasible. There's also the lack of the update right now to the floodplain map and the base elevation. And again, I think there's enough sensitive either hazard or environmental areas on the parcel that the lack of that information to me is problematic. Also, the preliminary plat as submitted does have some lacking information. I know the match line is probably a simple corrective item. It does, however, as it stands, mean that it's not clear how many lots we have and what their sizes are because of the fact that from a pure legal document, it's not currently accurate. The lack of the contour lines, the drainage locations, and again, the base elevation information for the floodplain makes it difficult to have a reasonable ability, in my perspective, to develop a primary infrastructure for the property, which would happen if the preliminary plat was approved. And also just at this point, I don't understand without that additional information, the feasibility of the stormwater mitigation planning. Just don't see enough detail right now with all of these missing pieces of data. And so I would like to see this file continue until such time as this missing information has been provided so that we have a clear picture of what the limitations are of the site, how those limitations will be mitigated in a reasonable manner.
I disagree. But yeah, if you're not willing to go ahead and move forward on this, there's really not much we can do, I guess. That's kind of one reason I asked what the terminology of a preliminary plat is. Because it is very preliminary and things can and usually do get changed around during the process.
Yeah, and that's, I'm okay with some very limited conditions of approval. So that we can try to say that these are the confines within which to work. But in my mind, there's so much missing data right now that it's not clear what the final plan would really be. Not clear in a reasonable level of detail for me. And so I'm willing to accept that if we have a good, clear path, that there are some things that sequentially will be addressed through the process later. But I don't see enough clarity of the current proposal with regard to the on-site conditions and the ability to mitigate all of those conditions as presented. So I'd like to see how the missing data would potentially change or inform revisions to the preliminary plat and the overall design. In order for us to have a level of confidence, with me to have a level of confidence, that there wouldn't be substantial changes that would have to happen between now and the final plat. Because essentially while there would be other approvals that would have to happen along the way, we are really giving a license to move forward with infrastructure development. So that's why I am where I am.
Okay.
And so we also have, so we kind of have two scenarios here. There's only a 2-commissioner board today, so that makes it more challenging. If we had a third commissioner, it's possible that there'd be, 2 votes in one direction or the other. My current position is I have items that I'd like to see completed or updated and part of the preliminary plat before moving forward with the final decision. And you're comfortable moving forward with the way it is, sounds like. So we could continue the hearing to a time and date certain in the near future to have a third commissioner, hopefully, to see where everything lands. Because then the only other option, what I'm proposing would be a further or a later continuation to allow time for more of these things to be addressed that I'm concerned about not having enough data on. So from that perspective, probably the most fair and reasonable approach for the applicant would be to go to a time and date certain with the continuation that's in the near future, to have a 3-member board to see what the outcome would be with a 3-member board, since right now we have a split decision. So would you be comfortable, as we've done in the past, with asking the applicant or their representative for their perspective on our
I have no
options?
problem with that, but the problem that I have is time management, I guess. My concern is if we do it sooner than what you get your questions answered, that we may end up having to do this a third time. So for efficiency purposes, I would rather wait till you get your answers, your questions answered,
Okay,
so that we don't have to continue it a third time. Doesn't make sense for us. It doesn't make sense for the applicants to keep coming down here and keep postponing things. So I'd rather.
yeah, the only reason I mentioned is and I know, I understand it, I see what you're saying, it's possible that with the third commissioner, they would have, they could take your position and therefore it would reduce the overall time. I don't know.
It's possible.
I just don't know what the outcome's gonna be.
Right, so it's flipping a coin. So, yeah, I'm fine with letting them make the decision on that,
Okay,
whether or not they wanna take a chance at getting it done sooner or.
so yeah, from my perspective, I'd like to see the deficiencies on the preliminary plat rectified, updated and corrected. And I'd like to see the PhD evaluation in spring completed and the outcome of that to know if that changes the preliminary plat. I'm sorry, if I said final plat earlier, I misspoke. Just going back in my head, I think maybe I said final, but I said preliminary. So we could either continue the hearing until a date in the spring when we anticipate PhD would have those results. Or we could continue the hearing to a date in the near future with a potentially, hopefully, a third commissioner on the board to see what the outcome would be at that time. So do you have a preference?
Can we ask before we do that? Is it proper to ask PhD a question at this time or not? Can we do that?
I believe the board can ask.
We can do it.
You're in deliberation and feel free to call on either staff or even if you have a question for a member of the public, you can do that as well to help in your deliberation.
So I would like to ask PhD that question.
Sure.
If we were to go ahead and move forward today on this versus waiting until the spring, when you guys go out and do your testing again, if you find something different in the springtime than what you found in September of last year, what would change, or what could change, because you don't have a crystal ball, but, worst case scenario, let's say.
Well, yeah, so as discussed, the purpose of the surface water monitoring would be to determine, both the presence of surface water, how long it's present. They follow state of Idaho rules guidance, as far as the surface water, the setback. So just real basic level, surface water in Idaho that's present longer than 2 months out of the year requires a full setback, which would be the 100 feet that we're referred to, otherwise it would be 50. So part of it's determining those setbacks. So if we do identify some of the parcels that may not be suitable, just as the engineer mentioned, we could revise plans. Not exactly sure what the Bonner County process would be, as far as changing the configuration from a preliminary to the final plat. And first of all, just really wanted to say thank you to Bonner County for allowing us to be involved in this process, because at this point, if we do identify issues, setback issues, that allows us to potentially create easements on the plat if there is space available, and then get those designated on the plats, to ensure that people will have suitable wastewater disposal later, or just sometimes that means changing parcel configurations, parcel lines. Another option could be, if the county is open to this, lifting sanitary restrictions by lot, which essentially means that some of the parcels, if they're not suitable and they stay in that same configuration, may not be able to get sanitary restrictions lifted or BOPs issued later without another means of wastewater disposal. We do have other options. So this is all in the context of subsurface sewage disposal. They are expensive, so the incinerator systems don't require those same full setbacks. That's a pretty extreme step, in wastewater disposal. The upfront costs are very extensive, and then also the operation costs, basically incinerate all the wastewater on the property. So we're just following, the basic Idaho processes for this. And so, just in reference to some of the other things that have come up, in Idaho, the nutrient pathogen study is not required in a scenario like this, unless it's either a nitrate priority area that has underlying contaminated groundwater, or they're utilizing the central system. So that's, just to answer some of the questions from the public, why the nutrient pathogen study is not a component of this. We're just following the standard state processes. So really the monitoring, the evaluation would really kind of drive any potential changes, and that's something to work with the owner and engineer on. But again, not clear what that means in terms of the Bonner County process and what approval today would mean for potential revisions in the future. So, any other questions?
I don't think so. So it sounds to me like, since this is a preliminary plat design, it means exactly that. It's preliminary. It's not by us accepting it. It's not setting it in stone and saying that they have to follow what's in place now, because the spring conditions may change. It's saying that nothing is going to happen, I don't think, as far as sewer system side of things go, until after they get their testing done in the spring. So by postponing our deliberation till spring, really was what we're doing, is we're keeping them from moving forward on other infrastructure items that they could be working on until the springtime, when PhD does their testing and comes out with the final design of whatever might be necessary for their sewer systems. So I feel it's a disservice to the people that if to put this off for 8 months, when in the preliminary design, if we were looking at a final plat or something, there were some of these issues, I would have some serious problems with that. But since we're in that preliminary design.
So at the final plat, construction is essentially complete, all the infrastructure is in place. And you've relied on all the individual steps that we don't have a say in, that happen from between preliminary plat and final plat. And so then you're relying on all the other permitting and agencies and hoping the final condition is something that you would find acceptable. So this is really our opportunity to, my general issue is, and on the one hand, I agree that the landowner, the developer, if they want to take on more risk, it's their right to do so. But from the community perspective, when I look at the comprehensive plan, I have to be able to look and say, that we're not gonna create, issues with regard to things like the hazardous areas, the natural resources. I can't look at the current information or the lack that we have of some of these outlying questions and issues and say that I have confidence that we're not gonna have problems in those areas that the comprehensive plan policies talk about. So I wouldn't be able to check that box and sign off on that because we don't have enough data for me to do that from my perspective. So that's the reason I think we have, as a county, had a history of being too loose with saying we're gonna allow almost everything that gets brought up as a concern to be a conditional approval item. And then you really just don't know what the process is gonna do because we didn't do enough upfront planning to have a level of confidence in what the outcome would be. And I don't see that as being responsible enough of a process. And so I think we should have more of that data provided on the front end. And like I said, just from even just an application perspective, it's my opinion that we don't currently have a complete preliminary plat. And so we're saying we do, but we do because we're making a condition of approval. It has to be provided later. And I kind of feel like we're cheating the system if we function that way.
All right.
I'm sorry, we delayed your ability to answer the original question. But if you'd like to answer that, unless Commissioner, you have another. Nope. Okay. If you'd like to answer the original question about if your preference would be for us to continue to a date certain in the near future to see if we have a 3-member board. Or else to the spring until after PhD has been able to conclude their investigation activities.
I would, can I ask a question? I just, it's.
We may not answer, but you can ask you guys.
Without the preliminary plat approval, we can't do the other investigations that we need to do in order to meet all the conditions. So if we postpone those for 8 months, we can't do anything to to get our result with that mental health. I can't put a shovel in the ground. I can't get a.
But you can't proceed with constructing infrastructure, but I don't understand the comment that you can't proceed with doing other investigations.
I believe what Gary's saying is the roadway, for example, can't be constructed.
Correct.
Maintaining those existing drainages can't be constructed. Any alteration of those drainages cannot be constructed. All of those are planned improvements that might change the results of the monitoring. So if they monitor now, they're monitoring a virgin site, no improvements. They would prefer to monitor constructed improvements to establish the setbacks with the roadway and driveway culverts and those things. Yeah.
Okay. Would Panhandle Health like to comment on that?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, that is part of the challenge because at this point, the purpose of our role in this is to lift sanitary restrictions, which is essentially ensuring that there's suitability. But obviously, small parcels and property like this, there's going to be bound to be changes from the stormwater perspective. And so that is, preferable is if we're evaluating in the state that's similar to when homes are going to be built. Yeah. So, that's a problem that we deal with often. We are working through several other subdivisions in Bonner County and other counties as well, where that can become problematic, create other challenges. And then with this particular proposal, one of the things that makes it even more challenging is just the small parcel size, the 1 acre lots. So that's regardless of soil or surface water, space gets tight. And so, that would allow for a more effective evaluation. But again, that we'll evaluate based on whatever the outcome of this meeting, which is Bonner County is. But that is, as the engineer said, that is a potential concern because things would change likely once some of the infrastructure is constructed. So it's really hard to answer what the West approach would be because, on one hand, it is an extensive cost on the applicants' part to construct the infrastructure, but that does give the best evaluation of what the surface water would be once it's an actual subdivision. Does that answer?
It does.
Thank you for coming today.
Oh, absolutely.
We haven't had that in the past.
just as a point of clarity, Jacob L. Planning Director, per chapter 4, like 411 or 412. So when an applicant is presented a 1 acre lot connected to urban water, sanitary restrictions are required to be lifted before final plat. So I think Mr. Peppin entertained an idea or present an idea that you can retain some sanitary restrictions on individual lots. Our code doesn't allow that, doesn't have that flexibility built into it. So before final plat would be presented, and it would have to be signed off, sanitary restrictions lifted by Panhandle Health on the face of the plat. So just as a point of clarity.
Okay, thank you.
Can look back through the comprehensive plan policies for a moment.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, do you have a rough dimension on a 90,000 gallon water tank?
Yeah. It's gonna go from memory, like 26 wide, 50 some long, 12 and a half deep.
Wow.
So, excluding and 50.
That's big. Where do you get those from? North 40?
They're really deep.
Concerning the water.
Can we ask a question right here? I'm it's more related to the board.
It's not, we're not really open to questions
Okay.
at this time.
Oh, okay. It's related to coming back. We're part of the thing.
Okay.
Can I ask?
We'll have to, when we're done.
Okay.
Yes.
question for the applicant. Do you have any information at this time with regard to expectation of the floodplain map correction or revision? Have you received any feedback as to when that might be complete?
No.
Dan Taddick, HMH Engineering, regarding the floodplain, FEMA did respond and they just requested additional information. I believe they have 90 days to respond, which they took all 90, and then they asked for more information. Talking to the folks that are doing that modeling, they felt like it was pretty trivial to respond, and we're anticipating a response early next week, but I don't know if that means another 90 days for them, or if that means, we'll hear something in a week. But they also requested our GIS shape files, which we inferred that to mean that they were accepting our analysis.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate the additional information from the applicant and from Panhandle Health with regard to trying to evaluate what the on-site conditions would be based on raw land versus having some of the infrastructure in place to deal with some of the stormwater, or how they can change conditions. Obviously, practically, we want to be as close as we can to the condition in which the actual septic system would be installed to better understand the impacts. So on that front, I can see where there could be some better information by doing that mid-process. I'm still not convinced that I can say it to the affirmative that we're not going to create an issue with regard to the comprehensive plan at this time, without understanding the final results of the floodplain information and having what I consider to be a complete preliminary plat with the discrepancies resolved and the missing information provided to see how all that works together. And so my preference would be to continue to a time and date that's a reasonable estimation of when we think HMH would have the time to update the preliminary plat to make it complete, and to hopefully have FEMA's response with regard to floodplain condition. So at this time, I'm unable to say that I believe it's compliant with the comprehensive plan policies based on that lack of information.
Okay. What's the calendar look like?
Alex Fan, Assistant Director. So the first open date that the board has would be October 22nd. Unless the board has a special date that they could meet, but that would have to, we would have to work with your staff to do that. But all the other dates that I've looked at in our calendar, any dates that we have scheduled are booked currently.
You're talking about, so he's mentioning current hearing dates. We could do a date like on a Monday or whatnot. It looks like you guys have some dates available. We can walk through some of those depending on how far out you want to push it.
Can I ask my question now? It's pertinent to what you're talking about. How do we know that 3 people are going to be? It's my question, like.
There's no guarantees.
So then what, we could keep coming back and we.
Yeah, ma'am. The public hearings are based on having a quorum, and a quorum is 2 3-member boards, so we never know what the outcome might be on any hearing. So.
And we don't really know exactly what it would be a sufficient time to try and get a FEMA report back.
Yeah, because the applicant's not controlling when FEMA's gonna respond. I would like to think, based on past experience, that the initial 90 days is typically the only 90 days, but it depends on how they choose to prioritize the information that comes in. So I think that trying to go too early is more problematic if we don't have the theme information.
It's just a guess.
Yeah.
3 weeks, 4
It
weeks.
is a guess at this point. So. Is it, from the applicant's perspective, is it correct that FEMA is the only significant potential time item? Is it, are you comfortable that a complete preliminary plat could be provided within a few weeks' time?
As far as the plat goes, we could turn that in tomorrow. Contours and match lines, and I believe the match line comment, I believe, was more about a question and how it was interpreted. There's nothing legally incorrect about the plat as presented. But adding contours, adding any plat notes, anything like that, yeah, I mean, it could be turned in tomorrow. The FEMA process is the unknown, of course, and that's a difficult part to answer.
So maybe better to go a little bit further than aim shorter and then have FEMA not have provided the information. That's the challenge. Alex, what was the first date you mentioned?
I'm pulling up the calendar along with yours, so. Sorry, I jumped in front. I'm not Alex. August 25th, if that's too soon, September 8th or 9th, it looks like there's some availability. I'm looking to your admin because she has more of your guys' personal calendars as well. That look.
September 24th is also.
Okay. So 8th or 9th of September, then the 24th, she's saying, is also.
Seems like the 24th might make more sense to allow a little bit more time for FEMA as well as not going all the way out to October.
We won't have to notice this or anything, right?
If you continue to a date and time certain, no.
I just wonder what if we continue this till the 8th or 9th and they don't have the FEMA report back, we can just open it up. We'll just reserve the 24th or whatever it was that was mentioned.
Yeah, the only hard thing is then you got a bunch of people showing up just to hear that's continued.
Well, it's deliberation.
Right.
It's not public comment.
Right, just saying.
Well, if you're gonna supplement the record with any new information, then you'd have to open that up for public comment.
Okay.
And then I would ask the board, if you're gonna continue and you want additional information, you can leave the record open for just that information, right? So you can.
I think that's the best plan. Try to keep it confined to.
So from what I understand, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. You want the applicants to address all the updates to the preliminary plat, such as contours and addresses and some others that were missing, that were included as conditions of approval, as well as attempt or work with or try to get back the report from FEMA for their response. And those are the two major items.
Those are the items that I'm seeing as current deficiencies to help with decision.
Okay, so then the public comment would be limited to what is being supplemented in the record, if I understand it correctly. Bill's got his hand up too. Maybe he can give some more guidance.
Mr. Wilson?
Jake, you just hit on what I was going to mention. Typically, when we want to go to a continued hearing for a specific batch of information that the board would like to see, it's helpful to the public and other people who want to comment to clarify the scope of the public comment that will be allowed, so we don't have to relitigate anything that's already been done in today's hearing.
Thank you for the clarification, Bill.
So the board still hasn't deliberated on other contested facts, right, Bill? I think you guys have kind of honed and focused the concerns you had, but there are some other raised contested facts
Right,
that
we
I
haven't
think would
done
need to be.
Yeah, I would say the board could reserve, could go back into it can, for deliberation purposes, the board can review everything, right? Because it still has the benefit of being present for all of this testimony. All of it still applies. I would just say, just for purposes of public comment and the introduction of new evidence, we just want to be clear on the limited scope for that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I just hear there's some contested stuff around, like some concerns about fire mitigation. There was some concerns about stormwater and sewage, for Panhandle Health. You guys have kind of started that, but haven't made a determination as to what you're.
Yeah, we haven't deliberated in detail on any of those, agreed. We haven't gone through the decision-making worksheet deliberation
Correct.
process. So, and that's, yeah, I intentionally didn't want to start walking through that because I have these concerns, and so I didn't want to spend that time to walk down that path to end up at this moment. So I wanted to address this first.
So September 8th is a Monday. You guys are free all afternoon after 1 o'clock. 1:30 is a good time. That's what your typical start times are for these types of hearings. Tuesday, the 9th is also open at 1:30. And to Commissioner Corn's point, we could open it. We can ask him, do you have you supplemented, or do you have the report back from FEMA? If you don't, you can immediately continue saying that is required for this application for us to make a decision, and then push it back until the 24th or another date that's available.
I would suggest the 9th then, just to give
One more day.
close to, I think it's close to 4 weeks, to hopefully have the FEMA response so that we can hopefully come to a conclusion of that day. The hearing. So do you want to say, September 9th at 1 p.m.? Is 1:30 a specific need for you guys?
No, it's just we don't forget when it starts at 1:30. If you say 1 o'clock, sometimes the agenda says 1:30. So then it's after lunch, lots of parties. Commissioner Clark shows up.
Right. So September 9th at 1:30?
I prefer 1 o'clock.
Let's debate something else.
Yeah,
Here for you. You guys want to do 8:30 p.m.? That's fine.
yeah, you never leave. We do 1 o'clock.
Okay. Last planning, have lunch early that day?
We'll get him out of here early, so get him dead on side one.
We need to make the motion to continue to September 9th at 1 p.m.
Yes. I will make the motion that we continue this hearing until September 9th at 1 p.m.
Step down a second. Any deliberation?
Done.
I think in your motion, you should specify how the record remains, right? So the record remains open for specific items as deliberated on or as discussed. And public comment will be limited to what will be supplemented in the record or something like that. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I think that's better because, otherwise staff is left to try to interpret what you said before, but we're not 100% clear. So just for staff's sake, if you are clear about what you want in the motion, then there's no opportunity later to have disagreements about what the board intended.
So the record remains open to what was discussed in public comments, limited to those items.
I think what was discussed as additional information required. Not everything that was discussed, just
The record remains open
to those items
to
that
provide the additional information that was requested.
Yeah, that sounds good. And public comment will be limited to those items. So.
Okay,
So for clarity, I think we need to vote down the current motion. Seconded. Anyone? Yeah. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Donkey,
No,
Commissioner Corn,
no,
motion fails. We'll entertain a new motion.
I will make a motion that we continue this hearing. The record remains open to provide additional information that was requested, and public comment is limited to that information that was requested to September 9th at 1 p.m.
Step down a second. Any discussion, deliberation, what's the board? No. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Donkey,
Yes,
Commissioner Corn,
Yes.
motion carries. It's-
Did you guys specify the date and time?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Very end of the motion.
Gotcha.
He paused,
Pause.
Threw me out.
Yeah.
comma, space.